economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. If you do not understand racism, which is white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Confuse you. Confuse you. Confuse you. Confuse you. If you do not understand, confuse you. If you do not understand, confuse you. If you do not understand, confuse you. Confuse you.
My definition of white supremacy and racism, I use those two terms as synonyms. I use the same definition for both terms. That definition is as follows: a global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white.
Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war.
There is a fifth dimension, beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
It's hard being black. I've been black for a long time. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I could go to the emergency hospital right now and just drop dead. What happened? He was tired of being black. It's hard. Got to go through all kind of bullshit every fucking day of your goddamn life.
Oh, I wish I was in the land of cotton. Oh, times there are not forgotten. Look away. Look away. Look away. Dixieland. In Dixieland, where I was born, early on one frosty morning, look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. Then I wish I was in Dixie. Hooray, hooray. In Dixieland I'll take my stand to live and die.
Everyone in the world has gone to bed one night or another with fear or pain or loss or disappointment. And yet each of us has awakened, arisen, somehow made our ablution, seen other human beings, and said, "Morning, how are you? Fine, thanks, and you?" It's amazing. Wherever that abides in the human being, there is the nobleness of the human spirit. Despite it all, black and white, Asian, Spanish, Native American, pretty, plain, thin, fat, vowed or celibate, we rise. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Just 'cause I walk as if I have oil wells pumping in my living room, just like suns and like moons, with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high. Still I rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries. Does my sassiness upset you? Don't take it so hard just 'cause I laugh. As if I have gold mines digging in my own backyard. You can shoot me with your words. You can cut me with your lies. You can kill me with your hatefulness. But just like life, I'll rise. Does my sexiness offend you? Oh. Does it come as a surprise that I dance? As if I have diamonds at the meeting of my thighs. Out of the huts of history's shame I rise. Up from a past rooted in pain I rise. A black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak miraculously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the hope and the dream of the slave. And so, naturally, there I go, rise.
It's hard being black. I've been black for a long time. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I could go to the emergency hospital right now and just drop dead. What happened? He was tired of being black. It's hard. Gotta go through all kind of bullshit every fucking day of your goddamn life.
Mammy. From slavery through the Jim Crow period, the Mammy caricature served the political, social, and economic interests of mainstream white America. During slavery, the Mammy caricature presented the idea that blacks, in this case black women, were content and even happy as slaves. Her wide grin, hearty laughter, and loyal servitude were offered as evidence of the supposed humanity of the institution of slavery. The Mammy caricature romanticized the realities of slave and servant life and obscured the unequal foundation of the master-servant power structure. Portrayed as an obese, coarse, maternal figure, the Mammy had great love for her white family, but often treated her own family with disdain. Although she had children, sometimes many, she was by mainstream standards sexually unappealing. She belonged to the white family, though it was rarely stated. She was a faithful worker. She had no black friends. The white family was her entire world.
It's hard being black. I've been black for a long time. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I could go to the emergency hospital right now and just drop dead. What happened? He was tired of being black. It's hard. Gotta go through all kind of bullshit every fucking day of your goddamn life.
All right, well, let's get away from the book then. Let's talk about current events.
Okay, about who?
Current events.
Like what?
The Oscars, did you tune in?
Did I see the Oscars?
Yeah.
The Prejudice, I'm sorry, the Academy Awards? Of course I saw it. But it was predictable. I already knew it was going to be. I knew that that stupid movie with Sandra Bullock was going to, that movie. I have grandkids and I have kids. I don't want them to be brainwashed by white folks. That white people have to save you. That angels are white, because angels aren't white. Okay. I was offended by that movie. I didn't like that movie. I walked out on it. I just wanted him to just sit on her and kill her. That would have been a great ending for me.
And Precious?
Oh, but Precious was a horror movie. Come on, that was The Color Purple 2. And the only reason why Oprah or those people could relate to that because they were molested as children. No Christian could sit and write that movie and sit through that movie. It's scary. Scary, scary movie.
Now, when people talk about the Oscars and black folks finally getting opportunities to win some, there's always sort of a backlash. It seems like people they want to see us at the Oscars but not winning for those kind of awards.
Well, the Oscars, it was named, Betty Davis saw it and she said, it looks like my Uncle Oscar. That's what it was named. The statue itself it's worshiping statues. It's Hollywood's, if God doesn't destroy Hollywood, he owes Solomon and Gomorrah an apology.
So, I mean, and you...
No, the Oscars are very racist. It's been racist right from the beginning. When Hattie McDaniel won for playing Mammy, they wrote her speech. The speech said, I'm a credit to my race. That in itself is stupid.
This is one of the happiest moments of my life. And I want to thank each one of you who had a part in selecting me for one of the awards. For your kindness, it has made me feel very, very humble. And I shall always hold it as a beacon for anything that I may be able to do in the future. I sincerely hope I shall always be a credit to my race and to the motion picture industry. My heart is too full to tell you just how I feel. And may I say thank you, and God bless you.
And we're too much into their white folks' awards and their what they set a standard or what they worship. We worship what they worship. You know?
Definitely.
No, I mean, if they say something is good, then that's the best. You know, somebody white said it was good. It has to be good. If somebody white says it's the best, it's the best. It's the best. It's the best. It's the best.
Quitting time? Who says it's quitting time? I said it's quitting time. I was the foreman. I was the one says when it's quitting time at Tara. Quitting time! Quitting time!
There were buffaloes on the plantation. I mean, and they weren't driving around in fancy cars or anything like that, but there were, like in the movie Gone with the Wind, the movie started off with a lesson that you can instantly learn, that I can instantly learn. Rather, I already knew it, and that is two black people were working in the field, and one of them looked up and said, quitting time, and the other one says, who says it's quitting time? I'm the foreman. I was the ones that says quitting time. And so then he says, quitting time. And that's after the other black person that said quitting time. Now, you look at those two black people out there in the field in the hot sun, one of them saying quitting time, the other one saying quitting time, and the other one telling them, one telling the other, you're not the one that's supposed to say quitting time, I'm the one supposed to say quitting time, and neither one of them are running anything. And that's a lesson in the movie Gone with the Wind, made in 1939. Now that says it all. That says it all.
I have written a poem for a woman who rides a bus in New York City. She's a maid. She has 2 shopping bags. When the bus stops abruptly, she laughs. If the bus stops slowly, she laughs. If the bus picks up someone, she laughs. If the bus misses someone, she... So I watched her for about 9 months. I thought, Now, if you don't know black features, you may think she's laughing. But she wasn't laughing. She was simply extending her lips and making a sound. I said, I see. That's that survival apparatus. Now, let me write about that to honor this woman who helps us to survive.
How you doing?
Just fine, I hope.
We're here with Butterfly McQueen. And Butterfly, now, we were talking earlier, and I asked you if you've ever been to New Orleans, and you told me something I thought was interesting, and we'll share that with our viewers. You were in Showboat, right?
Yes, I feel sure I think I did pass through there with Showboat, and I know I did years ago with an all-black cast of Harvey. And
Hey, you were saying that the black cast would take like white plays like Harvey.
Yes.
And that you would perform that. Would you go around the country like that? Or
well, we did 31 night stands in the Southwest.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, I remember that because we went in about 4 cars. The cast had 4 cars.
And that was it, huh?
Yes.
Oh goodness.
Yeah.
They were the days, huh?
Those were the days, yeah.
I'm curious, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers are too. What was one of your favorite moments or favorite lines from Gone with the Wind?
Well, my favorite line is when they're out in the field and the field man says, "Quitting time," and somebody, and the big foreman said, "Who done said quitting time?" And one of the female said, "I said quitting time, just to help you out." And he said, "I'm the one around here what says quitting time." And then he said, "Quitting time."
And that was quitting time.
Yeah, that was quitting time.
And you remembered his lines too?
Yeah.
You still do it?
It was funny, the way they do it.
I was talking to our cameraman before, and his favorite line was when you were putting the girdle on, and you said you don't have an 18-inch waist anymore.
That was Hattie McDaniel's. That was Mammy.
Mammy, ah.
That was not Prissy.
Okay. Okay. Well, Hattie, I want to thank you so much.
No, I'm Prissy.
Prissy. See, now you got me all confused. You got me all messed up. Thank you, Butterfly. Thank you so much. We'll be right back right after this.
Oh, okay.
Quitting time!
Gala days in Dixie. Streamlined Wings of the Wind bring Hollywood to Atlanta for a history-making world premiere of the motion picture epic Gone with the Wind.
Crowds go wild for the film's leading ladies, Vivian Leigh and Olivia de Havilland, accompanied by producer David Selznick. But the biggest cheers are for the King of Hollywood.
Yes, it's the Clark Gables, just in from the coast. Charming Carole Lombard and friend husband get a mighty welcome.
Georgia's governor declares a state holiday, and over 1 million people pour in to join in the 3 days of celebrations. 300,000 line the streets to watch the Parade of the Stars. Confederate veterans are guests of honor at the premiere at Lowe's Grand Theater on Peachtree Street.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I am here just as a spectator. I want to see Gone with the Wind the same as you do.
Like its predecessor, Birth of a Nation, the film arouses racial controversy. At the premiere, the black cast, including Hattie McDaniel, who plays the slave, Mammy, are conspicuous by their absence. The theater is restricted, whites only. Racial segregation prevails all across America. At the Oscars, Selznick has to beg for nominee Hattie McDaniel to be let inside. But she can't be seen anywhere. Off camera, she's sitting at a small table far away from her fellow nominees.
And now let's get right to it. The awards of 1939.
Gone with the Wind picks up an unprecedented 8 Oscars. McDaniel wins Best Supporting Actress. The first African-American to do so.
This is one of the happiest moments of my life. My heart is too full to tell you just how I feel. And may I say thank you and God bless you.
But racism continues to haunt Hollywood for decades to come.
It's hard being black. I've been black for a long time. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I could go to the emergency hospital right now and just drop dead. What happened? He was tired of being black. It's hard. Gotta go through all kind of bullshit every fucking day of your goddamn life.
In the nightclub of a Los Angeles hotel, Hattie McDaniel takes the stage. Clad in a turquoise dress and with white flowers cascading through her hair, She looks every inch the part as she accepts her Academy Award. But behind the scenes, segregation still divides the movie industry, and McDaniel's moment in the spotlight is bittersweet.
Quitting time! Quitting time!
McDaniel was born on June 10, 1895, in Wichita, a city in southern Kansas. Her parents, Henry and Susan, were both former slaves, and Henry had served with the United States colored troops during the Civil War. As a young girl, McDaniel moved with her family to Colorado, and they eventually settled in Denver. One of 13 siblings, McDaniel soon developed a talent for acting and singing, and when her brothers began performing a minstrel show, she decided to get involved. However, the performances were designed to mimic the white populace, and McDaniel often donned whiteface to entertain her African-American audience. A radical performer for the time, McDaniel went on to sing with a group known as the Melody Hounds. Then in 1929, she was all set to hit the road with a touring production of the musical Showboat. However, the stock market crash sent America spiraling into economic depression, and McDaniel suddenly found herself without a job. By this time, McDaniel was living in Milwaukee, where she found work at a local inn. But even though she was initially employed as a bathroom cleaner, her star quality shone through, and soon she was singing on the venue's stage. From there, she moved to Los Angeles, hoping to follow her siblings Sam and Etta into show business. At the time, opportunities for African Americans were scarce. In fact, black actors were almost exclusively limited to subservient roles. But instead of fighting the stereotype, McDaniel embraced it, becoming an immediate success. And in 1934, she bagged her first major role, earning hundreds of dollars and a movie credit to her name. However, the movie Judge Priest is not remembered fondly today. In fact, it did little more than provide a vehicle for the controversial actor Stephen Fetchit, who attracted criticism for further stereotypes of African Americans as lazy and dim-witted. Despite this, McDaniel's career survived unscathed, and by 1935, she was being cast in even bigger roles. That year, she appeared in the MGM movie China Seas alongside Clark Gable, who had become a close friend. And in 1936, she performed in Showboat once more, this time singing in Universal Pictures' take on the musical. And it was that role that would propel her to stardom beyond her wildest dreams. At that time, Hollywood producer David O. Selznick had just bought the rights to the novel Gone with the Wind for a whopping $50,000. And as excitement around the upcoming picture grew, the hunt began for a black actress to play the role of Mammy, a slave who plays a central role in the Civil War-era drama. Among those up for the role were actress Louise Beavers, fresh from an acclaimed performance in Imitation of Life, and even First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt's own personal maid. However, the American performer Bing Crosby had seen McDaniel in Showboat and suggested to Selznick that she would be perfect for Mammy. Apparently, Selznick agreed and McDaniel was cast in the role of a lifetime. But from the beginning, the story, with its Southern heroine and sympathetic depiction of slavery, was the target of criticism from the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or the NAACP. Although the association had concerns about the source material's offensive language and difficult themes, Selznick sought to reassure them that this adaptation would take a sensitive approach. And even though some racial slurs made it into the script, the worst of them remained on the page. In fact, some believe that McDaniel's refusal to speak certain words played a part in their removal. Eventually, Gone with the Wind was released to a great fanfare and acclaim. But as the stars arrived at Lowe's Grand Theater in Atlanta, Georgia for the premiere, McDaniel did not appear at their side. In fact, the state's segregation laws barred her from attending. But when her co-star Gable threatened to boycott the event in solidarity, she persuaded him to ignore the controversy and attend. However, it was far from the last time that McDaniel's race would prevent her from celebrating her success. In fact, it wasn't until the actress directly approached Selznick, armed with glowing reviews, that the producer put her forward for an Academy Award. In the running for Best Supporting Actress, she helped Gone with the Wind set a record with 13 Academy Award nominations. On February 29th, McDaniel arrived at the Coconut Grove nightclub inside Los Angeles' Ambassador Hotel. She and her escort were there for the Oscar ceremony, but the hotel did not usually welcome African Americans. And although Selznick had pulled some strings to get the ban lifted, McDaniel was forced to sit separately from her co-stars on a small table at the back. Despite the obvious prejudice against her, McDaniel took home the award, and after climbing on stage to collect it, she gave a memorable speech. "I shall always hold it as a beacon for anything that I may be able to do in the future," she's reported to have said. "I sincerely hope that I shall always be a credit to my race and to the motion picture industry." Although McDaniel was the first African American to win an Academy Award, her portrayal of Mammy drew condemnation from the NAACP and other similar organizations. According to them, she was guilty of perpetuating the stereotypes that confined black actors to menial roles. Moreover, they accused her of profiting from these negative depictions. However, the actress herself never accepted these accusations, and although she found herself typecast as a domestic servant throughout her career, she often rebuffed her critics with a witty retort, "Why would I complain about making $700 a week playing a maid? If I didn't, I'd be making $7 a week being one," McDaniel is once reported to have said. After Gone with the Wind, McDaniel took a series of similar roles before landing the lead in Beulah, a popular radio show. But just as she was making the leap into television in 1952, she died of breast cancer. And even though she asked to be buried in the Hollywood cemetery, the cruelty of segregation struck once more. Barred by a whites-only policy, she was instead interred at Los Angeles' Angelus Rosedale Cemetery instead. Today, McDaniel's descendants take an active role in promoting her legacy, including installing a memorial in the Hollywood Cemetery, now known as Hollywood Forever. And 70 years after McDaniel defied segregation to accept her Academy Award, black actress Monique accepted her own Oscar dressed in a blue gown with white gardenias in her hair.
It's hard being black. I've been black for a long time. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I could go to the emergency hospital right now and just drop dead. What happened? He was tired of being black. It's hard. Gotta go through all kind of bullshit every fucking day of your goddamn life.
Now, it's gotta be pretty hard for movie actors like this. Take a look. Hattie McDaniel. Butterfly McQueen. Stephen Fetchit. Bill Bojangles Robinson, Billy Buckwheat Thomas, Eddie Rochester Anderson. Now, those are guys who, as soon as I say their names and we're looking at the pictures, it brings a certain connotation because we know that they had to operate within a certain time period. Now, there are folks that I've heard say, well, you know, that dude was a sellout, and they were the sellouts of their day.
But let's just establish.
But they were actors.
They were
actors.
They were
brilliant.
absolutely
They were brilliant.
brilliant.
I'm gonna tell you
They
why.
were.
Because they had to act for real. They deserved Academy Awards.
Intelligent men, very intelligent
they deserved
women.
Academy because they put on this buffoonery. They put on this act. They knew what those white people wanted. At that time, it was overt. Now it's covert. You know, you're a nigga when you leave the room. But then you were that right to your face. Because it was a control factor.
Well, they took the period of time and they controlled it.
They took lemon and they made lemonades.
Yes.
They did what they had to do the work.
But they forwarded the stereotypes.
But it's not. But it was at that time.
I think he's saying that they did not have a choice.
I said they had to feed their families. Even when they were porters, they could speak 5 different languages.
But wasn't Oscar Michaud working at that same time?
Would you like to listen to the radio?
I'd rather listen to you, Lena.
Making films where there were some dignified roles. I've seen some of them, and he does have some toms, but for the purpose of saying this person's a tom.
But Andy on the radio was white, just like Eminem. Nothing's changed. Then when it came on television, these were black performers, and they had gotten Amsterdam from going to the Apollo and watching black people to steal, to take, and black people. I'd rather see black people acting black and buffoonery and doing things that black people do than see white people doing it. It's like with the rap and all that. I don't like it. I'm offended by it. I don't like it. It makes me want to start hanging black people again. Then I'll find out who's white.
But we have to admit that many of those performances that we saw we'll never forget them.
What those performances?
Oh,
the eyes?
My heavens.
Oh, no. I practice with the eyes sometimes myself.
Unbelievable. And,
no, they weren't
and for them to work a full day of whatever, in dignity,
and I
on
think
the
without
set
them,
and with people
I think without them opening those doors for them to accept blacks in a way that we wanted to be accepted, I don't think this man would have got accepted. when he came in. If we weren't there to do that, somebody has to open that door. Whether we open it with Yaza or
what if
yes, open the
you
door.
and Sydney and you had said, I have to coon it up too?
I coon it up back in those
Where
times.
would we be now?
Yeah.
I mean, that you guys stepped up and said, I'm going to be strong and dignified.
I think the time in which we lived, there was a universal readiness for the kind of change, the kind of upheaval that came along with our era. We weren't just defined by those leading men and those really remarkable looking women that graced the screen. We were also connected to a lot of things that were going on socially in our day. Right. Africa was in great turmoil. Nobody wanted to return back to the colonial formula after having fought in the Second World War, which many of us did because we were told that that war was for democracy, that war was to end white supremacy, was to end all of those inequities. And at the end of that war, we came back with expectations. I came back with expectations. Sidney came back with expectations. James Earl Jones came. So when the doors that we knocked at gave the slightest indication that they were ready to open, we marched in and brought those expectations with us.
As a black entertainer, at some point, there's some level of minstrelsy, and it's either the tap dancing or the black monster figure. You have to do one of those two things.
And somewhere in between. Well, didn't Hattie McDaniel say she would rather play a maid than be one? Mm-hmm. Didn't she say that?
Right. But where are the courageous people that said, I will not do those stereotypes, I will not play those? Where are they?
Let me ask you a question that sees comparatives. Would you say that aspect of the hip-hop culture, which now puts black men out with chains around their neck, defiling black women and going to a debased place for cultural expression, has any comparison with those who made the choice to play the buffoons of that era before?
It's hard being black. I've been black for a long time. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I could go to the emergency hospital right now and just drop dead. What happened? He was tired of being black. It's hard. Gotta go through all kind of bullshit every fucking day of your goddamn life.
Academy Award history is littered with fascinating stories, including more than a few about missing and stolen Oscars. Just days before the 2000 ceremony, 55 statuettes disappeared from a Los Angeles loading dock. All but 2 were later recovered. Then there's the case of Hattie McDaniel. The native of Wichita, Kansas, got her statuette as Best Supporting Actress for the 1939 epic Gone with the Wind. She was the first African American to win an Oscar, but hers has been missing for some 40 years. Carla Eccles of member station KMUW in Wichita looks into the mystery.
Hattie McDaniel acted in more than 300 movies, but she's best known for her role as Mammy, the maid in Gone with the Wind.
Mammy, darling. No, you to try to sweet-talk me, Miss Scarlett. I knows you ever since I put the first pair of diapers on you. I said I was going to land with you, and going I is.
Carlton Jackson, author of Hattie, The Life of Hattie McDaniel, says he thinks the actress sensed she was in the running for an Academy Award.
She wrote to some of her friends that she was sort of holding her breath, waiting for the announcement. But she didn't make a big deal of it until she got it. Then she made that speech where she could just barely finish because she was overcome emotionally.
This is one of the happiest moments of my life, and I shall always hold it as a beacon for anything that I may be able to do in the future. I sincerely hope I shall always be a credit to my race and to the motion picture industry. My heart is too full to tell you just how I feel, and may I say thank you. God bless you.
In the years before World War II, winners in the supporting actress category received plaques, not the Oscar statuettes. McDaniel proudly displayed hers at her home. Towards the end of her life, author Carlton Jackson says she became ill from breast cancer.
She began to parcel out various of her worldly goods, and she presented this Oscar to Howard University in Washington, D.C.
The plaque went on display at Howard's Fine Arts Complex. Thomas Battle is the current director of the Moreland Spingarn Research Center at Howard. He says that exactly when the award disappeared remains a mystery.
The understanding that I've developed has been that it was probably in the late 1960s or early 1970s, perhaps during a period of student unrest at the university. But unfortunately, all of the principals who would have been involved at the university at that time, administrators and others, are no longer with us, and we have not been able to get the kind of direct information that we would like to be able to pursue this investigation further.
Denise Randall was there. Beginning in 1972, she was responsible for tracking the university's inventory of artifacts. If the plaque did disappear during the student unrest of the late 60s, Randall says it might have been thrown away by someone upset that the award was for a black woman's role as a servant.
The sentiment at the time, if it was during the upheaval, it's quite possible someone being upset with her role at that time was Black Power, but they may not have understood where she really stood in the film industry and the pioneer that she was.
But Randall, who now lives in Wichita, says she thinks McDaniel's Academy Award was simply misplaced.
I think it was someone who moved it to a safe place and then didn't tell anyone where they moved it, and then since either retired or forgot about it. But in looking at the Fine Arts Department, where it would be the most logical place, we couldn't find it.
For nearly 20 years, Wichita actress Carla Burns has portrayed Hattie McDaniel in one-woman shows. She has her own theory about what happened to the plaque.
I do not believe that Hattie McDaniel's Oscar was thrown away. I believe that it was stolen. The representation of African-American people at that time was very powerful because she had done something no one else had ever done. And the next African-American woman to win was 51 years later with Whoopi Goldberg.
But there's one more possibility. Everyone could have been looking for an Oscar statuette and overlooked the plaque McDaniel actually received. For NPR News, I'm Carla Eccles in Wichita.
It's hard being black. I've been black for a long time. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I could go to the emergency hospital right now and just drop dead. What happened? He was tired of being black. It's hard. Gotta go through all kind of bullshit every fucking day of your goddamn life.
This is Talk of the Nation. I'm Lynn Neary in Washington, sitting in for Neil Conan. The actress Hattie McDaniel is best known for her role as Mammy in Gone with the Wind, for which she won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. She was the first African-American to be so honored by Hollywood, but the years leading up to and after that moment were often a struggle, first against poverty and also against the discrimination that pervaded American society throughout her life. In her new book, Hattie McDaniel, Black Ambition, White Hollywood, Jill Watts tells us the story of McDaniel's life. Jill Watts joins us now from member station KSON in San Diego, California. Thanks for being with us today, Jill.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
You know, I opened this book expecting a kind of standard Hollywood story, and I was immediately struck by the fact that the first chapter is not about Hollywood, but it is a story of slavery, which is where you choose to begin Hattie McDaniel's story. Why?
I thought that was really important to begin the story with her parents and their struggle in slavery and talk about her father and his life and his journey from being sold as a child from Virginia into Tennessee. I thought it set the stage for the reality of the African American experience, and it contrasts so greatly with Hollywood's manufactured images.
And I think people would be surprised to know, I think I was, to realize maybe that I know is the wrong word, but to be reminded that Hattie McDaniel, who of course was around in the 1930s, that her parents were slaves.
Right. Both her parents were in slavery, and both of them left slavery before the end of the Civil War. They both escaped slavery. They met each other in what was called at the time a contraband camp. It was a place where people were gathering near the Union lines, and her father then signed up to fight in the war on the side of the Union Army.
Now, they had a difficult time. They were very poor. How did she emerge from that poverty into a career in Hollywood?
Well, I think part of the family really did struggle, and her father fought for so many years for a pension from the government, but the pension, he fought 18 years and it didn't even begin to cover the family's needs. This was a family in incredibly dire poverty, and her older brother Otis, who was incredibly talented, he was the one that kind of stumbled onto the idea that the stage could not only be a place to release your artistic talents, but also a place to help support the family. And he was the one that really brought Hattie McDaniel onto stage. He took her with him to perform when she was quite young, and she says, by her own account, that's where she got bit by the show business bug.
We of course know her from her film roles, but she really started out as a comedian, didn't she?
Right. Those early years in Denver, when the family, actually she was born in Wichita, Kansas, and they moved to Denver just before the turn of the century. And those early years in Denver, she emerges as a young teenager, this incredibly satirical comedian, and she's greatly celebrated in the African American community for parodying the very images that later on she'll be forced to play in Hollywood.
Part of the irony of her life.
Mm-hmm.
She's also a blues singer.
Right. After several successful years in Denver, she eventually moved on and sort of embraced the blues as her performance signature. In the 1920s, enjoyed considerable success as a recording artist. She recorded several of her own compositions, and there you find she's kind of brought in another element to her personality, and that's this bold, very sensual, very, very, very outspoken blues woman.
So here's this woman who has really forged an amazing life for herself out of very difficult beginnings. Very talented, obviously, a comedian, a singer, gets to Hollywood, and what are the roles that she can be offered in Hollywood?
Yeah, once she gets to Hollywood, I think what she finds is that she's really confined. I mean, you have somebody who's so talented, but so totally constrained by the discrimination outside the studios, within the studios, and then these really, really constrained roles that she's permitted to play. African Americans, when they came to Hollywood, they came from these incredibly artistic backgrounds. They had played on black stages, and what they found was as maids and butlers, mammies, those were the roles that they were consigned to.
Let's listen to a clip from one of her performances in a film. This is the 1938 film Mad Miss Manton.
Held at the door.
I heard it. I ain't deaf. Sometimes I wished I was.
Have you another piece of cake, Hilda?
Yes, I have, but the kitchen's closed for the night.
Hilda, Miss Beverly is our guest.
I didn't ask her.
Comes the revolution, and we'll stop being exploited by our help. In my house, the revolution is here.
That was the actress Hattie McDaniel in the 1938 film Mad Miss Manton, and we are talking to Jill Watts, who has written a book about the life of Hattie McDaniel. It's called Hattie McDaniel, Black Ambition, White Hollywood. If you'd like to join our conversation, if you have any questions for Jill Watts about her life, Hattie McDaniel's life, give us a call. The number is 800-989-8255. That's 800-989-TALK. Let's talk about that performance and other performances of Hattie McDaniel. She was able to put her mark on these roles, which were purely intended to be really stereotypical roles of blacks in these servile positions.
Yeah, I think that's what's really key to understanding her and understanding how unique her style was in comparison to other black actresses of the era. She took each role and made it her own, and I think that the clip from Mad Miss Manton is such a great example of the McDaniel style, where you hear her saying the lines, but underneath there's a simmering boldness, there's a simmering, often anger and exasperation with the people that she serves. And I think that's where the convergence of the old satirical comedian and the blues singer comes into play. And so therefore you get this very bold kind of presence on the screen, and that's what makes her so unique. And I think that's what we haven't thought about in terms of Hattie McDaniel. We see her sell out and we see her take the roles, but each time she plays them, she attempts to rebel against them as well.
Yeah, was that recognized at that time, or was that thought of it that way at that time?
Well, I think there were some people within the entertainment community, actually. Clarence Muse, who was another African-American performer of the era, Muse praised her for being so unique, and I think there were people who did read the performances as unique. Although, however, I think the problem with playing these roles was that you always had Hollywood's kind of overwhelming racism and the undercurrent running with these roles, and it was really often very hard to read the context that she wanted you to see the roles in.
We're going to listen to another clip of Hattie McDaniel. This one is her most famous performance in Gone with the Wind, the film that won her the Academy Award, and this is a scene right toward the end of the film. Let's listen to it.
It's Mr. Red I was worried about. He done lost his mind these last couple of days.
Oh, no, Mammy, no.
I ain't never seen no man, black or white, sit store on any child. When Dr. Meade say her neck broke, Mr. Red grabbed his gun and run out there and shoot that poor pony. And for a minute, I think he go out to shoot himself.
Oh, poor Captain Buck.
And yes, and Miss Scarlett, she called him a murderer for teaching that child to jump. She said, you give me my baby what you killed. And then he said, Miss Scarlett ain't never cared nothing about Miss Buckley. It like to turn my blood cold, the things they say to one another.
Stop, Mammy, don't tell me anymore.
You know, it's interesting, Jill, you write that the producer of the film didn't realize how strong her performance was until he saw the final cut, and then realized how much of an emotional center, particularly in these last scenes, Hattie McDaniel was for this film.
Yeah, that's right. David L. Selznick, I think, thought that it was just a routine performance until they finally kind of assembled the film. They viewed it, and then he became convinced that this was the emotional high point of the film. And then, in part, eventually led him to nominate her for the Academy Award as Best Supporting Actress. I think that role is a very kind of important role where you see her getting to not only play the character she'd been playing, but infuse another kind of dramatic quality that she hadn't been allowed to do. As limited again as that role is, it was still important.
Yeah, and of course one of the ironies is that she wasn't even allowed to attend the opening night of Gone with the Wind in Atlanta, and they even took her pictures off of the publicity material. Tell us about that.
Right. Selznick had hoped to take her and the other African American cast members to the premiere in Atlanta, but the city fathers enforced the Jim Crow segregation and said absolutely that none of the cast members, even the star Hattie McDaniel, were welcome. And it went beyond that. I mean, he wanted the black performers to go because he was going to use them to promote the film within the African American community where it had been receiving criticism. But the city fathers enforced that, and then not only did that, but took it one step further and deleted her picture from the program. In the other parts of the country, her picture appeared in the program. In L.A., she attended the premiere, but in the South, she was forbidden from coming.
In the end, though, the Academy Award was disappointing because it didn't really lead her to the kinds of roles she hoped it would.
Right. The Academy Award was really a bittersweet victory. I mean, she saw herself as a pioneer. And she saw herself as a trailblazer. And the first Academy Award for an African American, she saw it as an individual accomplishment and as something that would portend better things in Hollywood and for the African American people. But despite the fact that it was that kind of triumph, Hollywood still continued to reinforce these stereotypical roles. She'd hoped for a breakthrough role, and she told the press that she anticipated one coming, but it wasn't forthcoming at all. And then on top of it, it traps her kind of in between white Hollywood and then the African American community. She's constantly kind of battling that, looking for a balance to continue to serve the community, but at the same time to serve her ambitions, which is to succeed in white Hollywood. And the cost is tremendous. It's a tremendous personal price she has to pay.
Yeah, but she was very proud of her success. I want to get onto that conflict that black actors faced. But she was really enjoyed her success also, we should say, at the same time. You write that she sort of had an intellectual salon and she was very happy about the fact that she could help other people as well.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's something, though, that goes way back in her history. You find her even as a teenager, as a young woman, the performances she did then were often benefits for African American organizations in her hometown. And, even when she's struggling, she's out there and she'll get on stage and perform in a benefit. But once she's able to make it and make that breakthrough in Hollywood, she shares the success with others. She buys the home in South Harvard Street in the Adams district of Los Angeles, and she opens the doors of that home. She, like you said, she has this gathering of African American artists where within the walls of her home they're able to perform the way they want to perform. And so she this is a post-Academy Award for the first few years. I think she was quite hopeful, and she wanted to share that success with others. She supported family, friends. People talk about how people would just come to her and she'd give out the money she had. So she's quite generous in that way.
Jill Watts is the author of Hattie McDaniel, Black Ambition, White Hollywood, and you're listening to Talk of the Nation from NPR News. Jill, let's talk about some of the problems that Hattie McDaniel and other black actors had to confront in Hollywood in terms of just other Black Americans began really rejecting them and turning against them because they did continue to play these stereotypical roles, and they kept arguing that they had no choice.
Right. I think you see during the 1930s the frustration continually mounting within the African American community, and I think the argument well made that these roles continued to enforce the oppression of African American people. And the black performers, they would argue, well, if we don't play these roles, we'll vanish from the screen, or they'll use white actors in blackface, which Hollywood had done. And they also continued to argue that they were trailblazers, and just by hanging in the industry, that was going to open these doors. And you have to admit, I mean, they faced considerable discrimination within the industry. However, like I said, the argument was well made that these stereotypes, which continually persisted, people became frustrated with, and people in American society were educated by those stereotypes, and that's the attitudes that they walked away with towards the African American people. So
Yeah.
that debate continues to heat up into the 1940s. Once the war begins, then it really takes off, because the war opens up the doors for the potential for better images, with the government supporting the idea that Hollywood should reform its images. And there was a sort of a ulterior motive in that they hoped to recruit African Americans into the American military.
All right, let's take a call now from Fernando in San Antonio. Fernando, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. A quick question. How old was Ms. McDaniel when she won the Academy Award?
Oh, she won the Academy Award in 1940, and so she was born in 1893, so she was 47.
Okay, now my question is, how much has Hollywood really changed when she won the Academy Award in 1940, and it took over 60 years before a black actor or actress won Best Actor?
Halle Berry.
What? Right. I think that's a whole book in and of itself. I think that's a really important question, and I'm kind of hoping that if we go back to this earlier era and look at this discrimination that was faced by these performers, the foundation of racism within the movie industry, that we can better understand what the performers in these modern times are facing. So I think Hattie McDaniel and that group of people, they faced segregation on the movie lots. They couldn't eat in the commissaries, or if they were allowed to eat in the commissaries, they're forced to eat at the counter. They didn't make the same wages. They didn't have wardrobe assistants. They didn't have dressing rooms. It's a whole plethora of things that they face. Now, you can't deny that to some degree that's changed. However, I think what you're pointing up is that we have to talk about the images that we see, and I think Spike Lee has been very articulate in reminding us that these images have become institutionalized in our culture, and we need to go back and look at those images, and we need more dignified roles for African American people.
All right, thanks for your call, Fernando. You know, and you point out, sadly and ironically, I guess, that when Halle Berry accepted her Academy Award and she thanked a whole line of other African American actresses who had come before her, she didn't mention Hattie McDaniel.
That's true, but I think what Halle Berry was doing is she was looking at the pioneers just before her, Diane Carroll and the others who had preceded in the industry just before she came into the industry. So I think that Halle Berry was kind of had her eye on that generation that had broken down the doors in the 60s and 70s, and those performers, they faced considerable discrimination too. They were sort of knocking down those doors that still had been there since Hattie McDaniel's period.
All right, well, thanks so much for joining us today, Jill.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me.
It's hard being black. I've been black for a long time. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I could go to the emergency hospital right now and just drop dead. What happened? He was tired of being black. It's hard. Gotta go through all kind of bullshit every fucking day of your goddamn life.
We're going to go back in time now and visit a neighborhood in Los Angeles that no longer exists. The story of Sugar Hill brings to life many of these ideas we just talked about: segregation, racist covenants, and who has the right to live where. Here's producer Janaki Mehta.
This is what Ra and Van Nickerson's childhood home sounds like today.
Where the freeway is now. Right here, this overpass? Yeah, that's where Berkeley Square was.
What she's pointing to, right there where that sign says quarter next 3 exit. lifted up, our house is right about there.
Their house is now where the Santa Monica Freeway is. Van was just 3 years old. His sister Ra was 4 when their family moved here almost 70 years ago. They lived in a charming little pocket of central Los Angeles called Berkeley Square.
The street was very wide. We had the old style lanterns. There were all kinds of craftsman houses, 5, 6, 7 bedrooms.
So these were big houses.
Very big. And we sold lemonade at the east end of Berkeley Square.
And we got our wagon, and we'd go up and down the street selling lemonades.
Right.
Berkeley Square was part of a larger neighborhood called Sugar Hill, which was named after a wealthy black section in Harlem. By the 1940s, Sugar Hill was home to some of the most prominent figures of black Los Angeles. Doctors, entrepreneurs, oil barons, even Hollywood stars like Gone with the Wind's Hattie McDaniel. On screen, she may have played a housekeeper or an enslaved person, but here in Sugar Hill, she hosted extravagant soirees in her sprawling mansion where people like Duke Ellington and Ethel Waters would perform.
This thriving community in Sugar Hill existed despite a powerful tool that white residents were using to keep neighborhoods white: the racially restrictive covenant. Ra Nickerson remembers her dad explaining this to her when she was really young.
Well, my father would talk about covenants. As a child, I worked with him in his real estate business, and covenants were alive and thriving, you know? He would show me documents, and he would show how the covenants were worded. No blacks, no Jews, just blatant hate, and it was everywhere.
Everywhere in the U.S., including in Sugar Hill. These covenants were basically agreements written into property deeds that made homeowners promise never to sell to African Americans or other minority groups. In 1940, 80% of the properties in Los Angeles had these restrictions attached to them.
And courts helped enforce these rules. But some white homeowners willingly violated these covenants to sell to black buyers, in part because those buyers were willing to pay more since there was less property available to them.
The first known black person to buy a home in Sugar Hill was Norman O. Houston. He knew very well at the time that he was defying a covenant attached to the house he bought in 1938. Here's Ivan Houston, his grandson.
He recognized things that were unfair, and he felt he was as equal as anybody and nothing should hold him back. So he kept pushing as far as he could push, but legally.
But as more African Americans moved into Sugar Hill, one white homeowners association didn't like what was happening. So they sued their black neighbors for violating these racially restrictive covenants. Hattie McDaniel, Norman Houston, and dozens of other black families fought back with their own black homeowners association.
They created the organization called the West Adams Heights Protective Association. Before it was called Sugar Hill. It was the West Adams Heights District.
Ivan Houston still has this old notebook that belonged to the association.
Okay, let's see. The meeting of the West Adams Heights.
The pages are all browned with age. The handwriting is in this tidy cursive.
That's the book of the minutes that, Granddad was the president of the group. It has all the minutes of the restrictive covenants, the redlining, and the meetings to start changing the restrictions.
Those meetings to change these restrictions, they went on for years. But then, on December 5th, 1945, the parties entered a courtroom. Legal historian Amina Hassan says that day, you could see wealthy black Angelenos dressed to the nines.
Hattie McDaniel and hundreds of sympathizers appeared in court in all their finery. This is what a reporter said. The stylish atmosphere in the court was such as to make one wonder if the judge would pour tea during the afternoon recess.
This crowd had shown up not only to see the Hollywood stars, but also to take in the legendary NAACP lawyer Loren Miller, who argued their case.
His presentation was electrifying, and the people were waiting for a good show, and I believe they got a good show.
Miller argued that racially restrictive covenants were unconstitutional because they violated the 14th Amendment, which mandates equal protection under the law. And remarkably, that argument worked. Hassan says this victory was about more than simply winning the right to stay in Sugar Hill. It was about giving Black people in Los Angeles access to a better life.
Housing was the crux of it all. It opened those avenues for them to move beyond the one part of Los Angeles designated for Black people. They could have their children in better schools, and they could find jobs in the area. Housing opened the door.
Eventually, the Sugar Hill case in California paved the way for a 1948 Supreme Court case, Shelley v. Kramer, which would ultimately deem racially restrictive covenants unenforceable nationwide. At the time, that victory felt momentous. To Ron Nickerson, it meant maybe the system could be used to help Black people live where they chose.
You don't make waves, but you quietly use the legal system. You quietly talk with your brethren, and you systematically, step by step, but you kept your focus. You knew that it was necessary for Black people to live where they wanted to live.
But it didn't take long for Ra and her brother Van to learn the two of them wouldn't actually be able to live where they wanted to live. A few years after Shelley v. Kramer, rumors began to spread that the government intended to demolish Sugar Hill to make room for a freeway as part of a federal push in the 1950s to modernize America's roadways.
Black residents in Sugar Hill banded together again. They headed to the state capitol and lobbied against the freeway project. But this time around, they lost their fight to stay in Sugar Hill. The California Highway Commission unanimously approved a new freeway that would split Sugar Hill in two and plow right through Ra and Van Nickerson's childhood home.
I watched the tractor bulldoze these homes down, and I was still young. We used to go and play in the lot where the freeway was being built. I remember the sand. I remember standing in the sand. I remember when it rained, there were puddles, and we played in the sand puddles across the street where they were building the freeway.
The government seized the Nickersons' home through eminent domain. Now, while the U.S. Constitution requires, quote, just compensation for any property acquired through eminent domain, Ra Nickerson says her family was cheated.
I remember my father telling me about eminent domain and how there was no option to stop this. The valuation for our home was quite low. It was not market value that we were compensated for. And so it was quite an upheaval.
An upheaval that Ra's father said would never have happened if Sugar Hill were a white neighborhood.
He was very, very angry. He felt the city government resented Black people living there, and this is their way of demolishing a very viable community to support racism.
At the time, highway planners used the language of science to justify building freeways through communities of color. That's what Eric Avila says. He's a professor of urban planning at UCLA.
They presented a kind of dizzying array of charts and graphs to insist that this was the most economically efficient route for this particular freeway. They denied any questions of race. They denied any questions of bias.
What they did instead, Avila says, was say that they were targeting so-called blighted communities.
I don't think we know the extent to which Sugar Hill was designated a blighted area because, it was affluent. But in the discourse of urban planning in the mid-20th century in the United States, blight was often synonymous with people of color and with African Americans in particular.
Around the same time the freeway construction through Sugar Hill began, the California Division of Highways proposed another freeway that would cut through Beverly Hills. But when that wealthy white community protested, officials canceled construction.
Almost 70 years later, the Nickersons still feel the loss of their childhood home.
It was just sad. I didn't know what to expect because that's all I knew was Berkeley Square. And I really felt very secure in the community. That's all I knew, So I was quite rattled by it all.
She and her brother say after the freeway forced them to leave their childhood home, they never quite experienced the same safety and comfort that Sugar Hill provided.
And we moved over onto Bronson Avenue, and I immediately got into some problems. Most of that neighborhood was white, and a white boy called me a nigger in front of my house. And pardon my vernacular, but I kicked his ass. That was the beginning of the real world for us.
Much of Sugar Hill vanished when the Santa Monica Freeway came through, erasing a Black community to connect newly built white suburbs to the city. When freeways carve through communities, property values there decline, which means less money for schools in the area. And for many residents who live along freeways today, toxic pollutants and constant noise are part of everyday life. These consequences have played out in cities all across America, especially in Black and brown communities.
Before we parted ways that day, Van and Ron Nickerson closed their eyes and listened to Berkeley Square one more time.
I hear the rumbling of the automobile. You can almost feel it sitting here, shaking the ground. That was non-existent when we were kids. It was quiet.
Very quiet. You can't hear the birds anymore.
As we walked away from the freeway overpass, Ron Nickerson headed to the corner to catch the next bus to Inglewood, where she lives now. And Van got into his car to begin his journey back home to a town more than an hour away. His drive would begin on the Santa Monica Freeway and take him right through the middle of what was once known as Sugar Hill. Tomorrow on the show, the story of how Compton, California went from nearly all white to majority Black after predatory real estate practices lured in Black families searching for the suburban dream.
It's hard being Black. I've been Black for a long time. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I could go to the emergency hospital right now and just drop dead. What happened? He was tired of being Black. It's hard. Gotta go through all kind of bullshit every fucking day of your goddamn life.
We are sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Today it's time to stop singing and start swinging.
We're coming to get our check.
You are now listening to P.A.R. Just People Activity Radio. And I'm your host, JohnGHorse. Welcome.
I'm sorry, son.
You have found your family. And a peaceful play.
I'm sorry, son. All your money's gone.
PAR is a family-friendly information distribution program seeking to inform non-white people, in particular, Black classifieds, and assisting in counter-racist codification. The title of today's episode is The Tragic Legacy of Acting Black, Episode 5, Hattie McDaniel, the Trailblazing Scapegoat of Anti-Black Pop Culture. One more time, the title of today's episode is The Tragic Legacy of Acting Black, Episode 5, Hattie McDaniel, the Trailblazing Scapegoat of Anti-Black Pop Culture. Kurt, holla at him. Yeah.
I'm sorry, son.
I got a Jones running through my bones. It's called Black self-respect. Yeah.
I'm sorry, son. All your money's gone.
There is no benefits to having Black self-respect and producing justice. Under the context of racism, white supremacy, family, you will not be compensated to produce justice. But old John G got that Jones running through his bones.
I'm sorry, son. All your money's gone.
Yeah.
You are now listening to PAR.
That's People Activity Radio. Hosted by JohnGHorse, a blue-collar commentary radio podcast attempting to remove confusion in everyday social events. If you are subject to non-white classification, in particular black classified, welcome. You have found your family in a peaceful place.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And this goes out to all the John Henry practitioners, the hard-working, blue-collar, law-abiding citizens subject to black classification around the globe. We're going to run that back one more time. Curtis Mayfield, mama, there goes that man.
I'm sorry, son.
It's okay, family. It is okay. What you need to do, if you don't want nobody seeing you cut that jig that you cutting, go on and close those shades and curtains so as to be concealed in your dancing, your shoulder bobbing.
I'm sorry, son.
I know it's in your spirit. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Kurt Mayfield family.
I'm sorry, son.
Had to do it to you. Had to do it.
People Activity Radio can be found at peopleactivityradio.com. That's peopleactivityradio.com. On Twitter at JohnGHorse. On Instagram at j.g.horse. On our YouTube channel titled People Activity Radio. On SoundCloud channel titled People Activity Radio. Our Tumblr page titled People Activity Radio. On Spotify titled People Activity Radio. Apple Podcast, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and all other podcast platforms. If you find this information constructive, please subscribe, like, and share.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. If you find this information constructive, please subscribe, thumbs up, and share with like-minded individuals. And this is indeed P.A.R. People Activity Radio, and I am your gracious and humble host, John G. Horse. And I will repeat the title of today's episode one more time. The title of today's episode is The Tragic Legacy of Acting Black, Episode 5, Hattie McDaniel, the trailblazing scapegoat of anti-black pop culture. One more time, The Tragic Legacy of Acting Black, Episode 5, Hattie McDaniel, the trailblazing scapegoat of anti-black pop culture. And yes, indeed, that is Hattie McDaniel, also known as the #1 mammy caricature in the history of United States cinema. She is most known for her mammy character on the Confederate military sympathizing film, silver screen blockbuster that we all know is Gone with the Wind. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Where should we begin? Where should we begin is always the question. And my goal on today's episode, family, is the same goal that I seem to have every episode. Well, 2 goals. Number 1, give you the information, let you do your own research, do with it what you will, and ultimately to remove confusion. This is going to be a quick hitter commentary portion of this episode because we don't need all my opinions and I don't need to manipulate the facts. You got all those facts in the first hour and 9 minutes of this episode, and all the source material is there for you. You understand me? It is up to you to do your own research and come to your own conclusion, but this is my conjecture as it pertains to our ancestor, Hattie McDaniel, a.k.a. Mammy. And I'm here to say this one thing. In my attempt to remove confusion, I attempt to look at our contributions or lack thereof in these United States from a prism, from the perspective, from the context of the global system of racism, white supremacy being in full effect. And from that position, I will attempt to remove confusion on our ancestor, Hattie McDaniel. Now, for my younger viewers, I know y'all saying, who in the world is he talking about? Hattie McDaniel, Mammy, what is all this fuss about? I will refer you to some of my first episodes talking about this very subject. You can find it on the playlist of Anti-Black Pop Culture, and is the racist white supremacist origins of Hollywood, and my other video series titled, well, portion of the title is The Creation of Coons. And we deal with the caricatures of plantation tradition, or blackface minstrelsy, or as I call it, anti-black pop culture. There are certain caricatures, negative portrayals of victims of white supremacy known as slaves and or prisoners of war stuck on the terror squad plantations of the colonies within the United States of America. These plantation traditions, anti-black pop culture, were passed throughout the globe. One of the number one products distributed out of the shores of the United States colonies was plantation tradition and or blackface minstrelsy, plantation celebration. You understand me? And part of the propaganda was to create the notion, to create the environment of happy black classifieds and or happy enslaved black people, happy prisoners of war. If you have any type of logic in your bones, in your brain, in your spirit, ain't no such thing as a happy prisoner. You understand me? Unless that prisoner is suffering from mental health issues, especially prisoners subject to the terroristic onslaught of mistreatment in all areas of people activity on the terror squad plantations of the United States of America. That being said, I am going to attempt to chronologically explain the clips that I played before my presentation. And one of the first clips I played was our grandsister Maya Angelou reciting her poem over the background music of Dixieland. And it was her famous poem called Still I Rise. Our grandsister Maya Angelou said what she said. Let's move on. Then I played the definition of the Mammy caricature after our grandsister Maya Angelou recited Still I Rise. Just for definition's sake, you know, we're going to be saying the term mammy, and a lot of our younger listeners don't know what that term means. Refer back to the second clip of this episode if you're still confused about what the mammy caricature term means, what it is, and how it works within the lexicon of racism, white supremacy. The third clip that I played was our late great comedic ancestor Paul Mooney's perspective on the Academy Awards. He said what he said. Let's move on. Then I played a clip of our elder Neely Fuller Jr. giving his critique on the Gone with the Wind scene with the black individuals in the fields arguing over who can say it's quitting time when, you know, everybody's on the plantation. he said what he said. After the clip of Neely Fuller talking about quitting time, I played a rare interview of our grandsister Butterfly McQueen, who also was on the Gone with the Wind movie with our grandsister Hattie McDaniel. And Butterfly McQueen don't look like Hattie McDaniel, don't sound like Hattie McDaniel, but she was being interviewed by a suspected white supremacist that was getting her mixed up with Hattie McDaniel. And our grandsister was laughing, but she wasn't laughing. She was just showing her teeth, making a sound, as our grandsister Maya Angelou would say in her poem. And I played Maya Angelou reciting a portion of the poem of the defense mechanism for survival, showing your teeth when ain't nothing funny, making a sound. You're laughing, but you ain't really laughing. It's just a defense mechanism to make white people feel comfortable. Let's move on. VGQ, grandsister, Butterfly McQueen. After the Butterfly McQueen interview where she was being mistreated, I played a clip describing our grandsister Hattie McDaniel's experience as it pertains to attending the premiere of Gone with the Wind. And she didn't have an experience of attending the premiere because she wasn't welcome at the premiere, which was in Georgia, where there were honorary guests that were Confederate vets. Now, last I checked, Hattie McDaniel was the daughter of a black Union troop who could not get cooperation from state and federal government to give him proper medical compensation for the injuries suffered in saving this nation, as well as saving his family members and loved ones off those terror squad plantations. Hattie McDaniel's father, he couldn't get compensation, but honorary guests to a movie that was produced out of anti-black Hollywood named Gone with the Wind were people who were trying to overthrow, excuse my octaves family, let me lower my voice, who were trying to overthrow the United States government, which was saved by members or descendants of members that was on the cast of the show who wasn't welcome at the premiere in Georgia. Racism White Supremacy, baby. All areas of people activity. And everybody's patting their pockets, acting confused, talking about something where they fought for the black cast members to make the premiere. No, heck they didn't. The premiere was in Georgia. Because, let's be honest, Gone with the Wind was a movie showing apathy and empathy toward traitors who wanted to take over the Union. And the institution of Hollywood was producing a movie glorifying those individuals, treasonous traitors. Yet, individuals who were descendants of individuals who saved the Union weren't welcome. And where's the movie? Where's the cinematic production, the blockbuster film produced out of the institution of Hollywood glorifying the black Union troops? You understand me? Now, I know some individuals will say glory. Okay. I'll mute my line on that one. Let's move on. After I played that clip, I just wanted to put a little respect on our grandsister's name, and I'm talking about Hattie McDaniel, because she comes from humble beginnings. She's descendants of slaves who fought their way off the plantations, saved the Union, did not get compensated for their efforts. She came up in real poverty. She was the baby of 13. Nothing came easy. They had to make the ends meet. They moved from city to city, trying to survive. Children had to start dropping out of school, including our grandsister, Hattie McDaniel. A couple of her brothers, a brother and a sister, had some skills in the entertainment. They started to join these things called minstrelsy troops, vaudeville troops, blackface minstrelsy troops, whatever you want to call them. And they noticed their baby sister, the last of the 13 kids, Hattie, was blessed. She was talented. Now, let me explain something to your family. It doesn't matter what system you're in, even though you're in a system of racism, white supremacy, even though you're subject to black classification, and you catching mistreatment with the rest of the crew meaning all people that are classified as non-white, in particular people subject to black classification. Those of us who have a gift, a talent, and we are simply blessed, and if we are focused on our gift and we are passionate about our gift and we hone our skills within our gift, it doesn't matter what the rules are, even the rules of racism, white supremacy. Those who are talented will always do well. All they need to know is what are the rules. And under the system of racism, white supremacy, a woman like our grandsister who comes from abject poverty, you understand me, has incentive and motivation and this thing that we call ambition to rise, as our grandsister Maya Angelou says, out of abject poverty. And as our ancestor Hattie McDaniel was honing her skills in the minstrelsy troupe sector of the entertainment business, she started to rise because she was that woman. She was that girl touched as a child, honing her skills. No different than our late great ancestor Kobe Bryant, who happened to be born into a family with a professional athlete. And he was surrounded by all the tools and had access to all of the training of a professional, and he had passion, and he rose to the top because he was ambitious about becoming the best professional athlete, aka basketball player, that he could be. He was driven with the skill set and the talent to go with. So let's look at our grandsister like a Kobe Bryant, a Michael Jordan, a Jim Brown, a Jackie Joyner Kersey, a Flojo, a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You follow what I'm saying? A Barack Obama, a Michelle Obama. Dare I say, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. Skill set, talent, ambition, all classified as black under a system of racism, white supremacy. Gonna make some compromising decisions, aren't they? Didn't they? Don't we? Are you following what I'm saying? So, before our grandsister got to the institution of Hollywood, she was already a known celebrity amongst entertainers. She was a writer. She was a singer. She was an actress. She was a comedian. She could do it all. But Hollywood wanted her to do one thing. And Hollywood was cutting the biggest checks. Hollywood, the institution of Hollywood, wanted her to play that caricature that she plays well as other caricatures. But this particular caricature was the mammy. And she played the hell out that dang cold, that caricature. Excuse me, family, I'm fumbling over my words. Again, I saying that the caricature of the mammy is a constructive caricature? Heck no. We've already concluded that we are under a system of racism white supremacy. And part of the racist white supremacist propaganda department is the entertainment industry that we know as Hollywood. Hollywood's job has always been to promote anti-black pop culture. And part of anti-black pop culture, an essential element of anti-black pop culture, is the mammy caricature. Hell, if Hattie wouldn't have did it, another non-white person classified as black probably would have did it. And or if nobody classified as black would have did it, somebody white would have painted themselves black and played the caricature. The caricature existed before our ancestor Hattie McDaniel existed. And those caricatures, because we are in a system, a toxic environment, those caricatures, our ancestors put soul, seasoning, and life into those caricatures when they were honing their skills on the blackface minstrelsy circuit. That's either true or it's not true. Now, when you have these skills and you want to maximize your opportunities to make a living off of your talent, you're going to have to make some choices. Our ancestor was a dark-complected woman with a voice. She could write, comedic timing. Where is she going to get paid maximum compensation for that skill set? It's not like she was light and bright with wavy hair, beige skin, and was going to be able to have a little bit more options than she did. She did what she had to do with the tools that she had. Coming from abject poverty. This element of black classification has to always be taken into consideration. Am I saying that the image of the mammy is constructive? No, I'm not. Black classification under the system of racism and white supremacy ain't constructive. And all of the obstacles placed in our way, again, family, we were not supposed to survive enslavement, but we did. We were not supposed to survive the Civil War, but we did. We were not supposed to survive Reconstruction, but we did. We were not supposed to survive the re-implementation of racism, white supremacy, white terror domination, the black codes, peonage laws, and Jim Crow laws, and mass incarceration, but we survived. At no point in the United States history of existence did they plan on those of us subject to this here thing called black classification were we supposed to survive. But as our grandsister Maya Angelou says, still we rise. Now, in part of the source material presentation at the beginning of the episode, you heard that our grandsister was catching hell from the white supremacists, being discriminated upon, being segregated against, and she was catching hell from those of us who were subject to black classifications, talking about she was promoting negative stereotypes. How in the world can Hattie McDaniel promote a stereotype when she can't even sit her behind down with her white contemporaries at the premiere of the movie what she getting talk crazy to about. Again, part of counter-racist codification is to always keep your eyes on the white supremacists. Unfortunately for our ancestor Hattie McDaniel, the so-called NAACP Urban League and those who we identify as the talented 10th decided to go on an all-out smearing campaign of Hattie McDaniel. They needed to be sitting talking to Hattie McDaniel, asking her to get some doggone contributions to their broke behind institution instead of going, I'm sorry, family, VGQ, let's move on. Now, I also thought it was important to illuminate some of the information about our grandcester's political positions that she took. Come to find out, because she was subject to black classification, she was victim of redlining discriminatory covenants in what used to be called Sugar Hill, Los Angeles, the black section of Los Angeles. And white homeowners in Los Angeles had a problem with non-white homeowners, in particular black homeowners, bringing down the value of their property. Now, we're not talking about no Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Carolina, Texas, Arkansas. We're not talking about no South. We're talking about Los Angeles, California, with card-carrying white supremacists mistreating and targeting homeowners that were classified as black in what they called then Sugar Hill, Los Angeles. Our grandsister Hattie McDaniel, and with other residents that were classified as black, most likely residents that were talented in other areas of people activity, doctors, lawyers, politicians, entertainers, you understand me, in the Sugar Hill community. They were being mistreated no matter how talented they were. I'm gonna repeat. If you are talented and you're ambitious, it doesn't matter the system that you're in. All you need to know is the rules. For example, these same talented individuals on a plantation would have been in leadership positions, and or their talent would have gotten them into a buffer class of people. There were many inventors on the plantation, but they still were slaves on the plantations. There were many medicine practitioners, natural health practitioners, and midwives, and architects, and engineers, and inventors, and scientists, and mathematicians on plantations with black classification, but they were still on plantations. And if their skill set benefited their owners, they were placed into a higher class or buffer class from the regular masses of the blue collar workers on said plantation. No different than, dare I say, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, dare I say, former President Barack Obama, dare I say, Jim Brown, dare I say, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, dare I say, Oprah Winfrey. Their skill set make white folks a lot of money, no different than our grandsister Hattie McDaniel. How in the world are we going to condemn Hattie McDaniel and those who were in the time period that they were in? How are we going to condemn them for being ambitious and playing the only game in town? And I asked the question that our grandsister, well, maybe Harry Belafonte is still among us. I don't know if he is, but he asked a question on a platform called That's What I'm Talking About, hosted by Wayne Brady. And our grandsister asked a question. We're very critical of our ancestors of the blackface minstrelsy era of entertainment in the United States. But what is our position on our contemporary entertainers, our current entertainers who are promoting, well, I wouldn't say promoting, who are participating in negative images just as our ancestors were in the same entertainment industry? And I will add to the question that our elder Harry Belafonte asked. What have we done as a group to produce platforms for those people who have talent and skills and ambition to be compensated competitively? Have we created the apparatuses and the institutions to recruit those individuals so that they can promote Black self-respect? I think we all know the answers to those questions. So let's move on. That being said, before we start name calling and finger pointing, how about look into the mirror? And old John G looks in the mirror every day before he goes to clock in at what he calls the plantation and or his place of occupation. And I compromise myself day in, day out, because I got a water bill, I got a light bill, I got a mortgage, I'm an attempted father, and I'm an attempted husband. All that costs. Producing information about Black self-respect, I would love to do. But I'm looking around for any institution where I can make a competitive wage for my survival and also promote what I thinks needs to be promoted. I will go hungry looking for such a platform. So here is old John G right now creating what is absent out here. A platform which produces self-respect, attempting to remove confusion as it pertains to our relationship and our position in this environment. The environment that I have concluded, and I could be in error, feel free to correct me if you think I'm talking crazy, is a toxic environment that I have identified as an environment of anti-Blackness, also known as racism, white supremacy, white terror domination, as Dr. Kamal Cambon says. And to produce counter-racist thought, speech, and action content does not pay, does not get views. Am I crying about that? No, I'm in a system of racism, white supremacy. It's working just fine. But this is a labor of love. I have ambition. I have passions. I don't come from abject poverty, but I know what poverty is, and I was sure enough close to it. Old John G was fortunate enough to have two parents that practiced John Henryism and that kept a roof over our head. Me and my siblings. You understand me? And we were able to survive as children, and then we are able to have had examples of John Henry practitioners, survival strategies. So now we're practicing John Henryism and surviving. But this is not how it's supposed to be, family. Hattie McDaniel shouldn't have had to make a decision to play a mammy. You understand me? Hattie McDaniel, with all the talent that she had running through her bones, shouldn't have had to make a decision to play the mammy if we were in a healthy environment of justice. Produce justice, family. That's the culture. Produce justice. No one else is going to produce it for us. We are subject to a system of anti-Blackness, and in every sector, department of this anti-Black system, we are compromised, just like Lincoln, Stephen Fetchit Perry, just like Hattie Mammy McDaniel. And I was so impressed and encouraged to hear our elder Diane Carroll and Harry Belafonte say, hey man, they did what they had to do and they were brilliant. there was no other avenue for them to maximize compensation for their talents and skills. Our ancestor Hattie McDaniel wasn't just a mammy. And we gotta stop saying that. She was compromised in the same system that we still dealing with today. And to our grandsister, Hattie McDaniel, VGQ, Victims Guaranteed Qualification to respond to your victim status any way you see fit. Who am I to judge her on how she responded to her victim status? You understand me? And that being said, she was victim of terrorists harassing her and other black homeowners in Sugar Hill, Los Angeles. And our ancestors took her resources and her connections and took those suspected white supremacists all the way to the Supreme Court. And as a result of her black self-respect, the restrictive housing covenants, racist white supremacist redlining housing covenants, restrictive covenants were lifted, and those people who were subject to non-white classification, not just black classification, all non-whites are now today able to buy property, well, supposedly, wherever they want to, because of our grandsister, who wasn't just a mammy, Hattie McDaniel. You understand me? And we sitting here letting people tell us who our people are and what we are. It is our responsibility. We are duty bound to control the narrative of our legacies and contributions to this environment. And in this environment, we're always trying to inject justice within this environment. And our opponents are always trying to prevent justice. Now, we know who the opponents are. I don't need to say it. And last but least, before I get out of here, family, Hattie McDaniel struggled, worked hard. I believe she was in more than 300 films, most of which she didn't get credited for. But that is John Henryism if I ain't never heard it before. And over 300 films, meaning she was working hard as I don't know what, because she probably wasn't getting compensated for her contributions to the films like she wanted to be compensated, which probably contributed to the choice of playing the mammy. Just trying to make ends meet. She's a descendant of people who gon' rise no matter what the situation is, just like her mama and daddy rose off them terror squad plantations, just like her daddy went back to the terror squad plantations and put in some work with the black Union troops, saving the Union and liberating his people. I know I sound like a broken record, family. That's where she come from. And the white supremacist sector of entertainment, which was Hollywood, awarded our grandsister for the work that she did. Did she earn the award? She earned the award. She played the hell out the mammy. Sure enough did. Probably the best mammy you ever gonna see. Yeah, I said it. To get those skills and to have that comedic timing and to have all the things that you have to play that role, which is a caricature. It's not reality. It's a caricature, family. A creature created by people who classify themselves as white and we believe practice the religion of white supremacy. Putting soul, rhythm, and life and seasoning into that character. What type of effort, what type of work ethic did our grandsters have to do what they did and to continue to do what they're doing right now? I'm not calling out no names. I'm trying to name call VGQ. when she received the Academy Award, which was something that she earned. Not that old John G's putting value on the award, but it's like a degree. Yeah, you go to white institutions, you go to white higher learning institutions and you get a degree, but are we going to say that our doctors, lawyers, scientists, they don't work hard to get those degrees? Yes, they do. You can't take away from what your people do. Just despite white supremacy, they still rise. Still we rise. Maya Angelou. I'm not trying to get all deep, but I'm just saying we were not supposed to survive. At no point had the United States ever planned on people subject to black classification to survive white supremacy. But we still here. What are we gonna do? You understand me? She won the award, and upon her passing, she wanted to be buried in the Hollywood cemetery, and again, mistreatment all the way from the cradle to the grave. It was a whites-only cemetery, so she wound up being buried somewhere near. She has a plaque at the white cemetery. I guess that's a consolation prize, so to speak. And she gave her Academy Award, her Oscar, to the historically black college that we know as Howard. And as you heard on the clips I played before, they lost the Oscar. Don't nobody know where the award is. I'm sure when she thought about giving it to that black institution of higher learning, which has housed a lot of our intellectual giants in our history in this country, she thought it was going to be in safe hands. But family, we are under a system of racism, white supremacy. And when you're dealing with people subject to black classification, you are supposed to fail. You're not supposed to succeed. You're not supposed to rise. And the system is working just fine if Howard University lost our grandcestors Oscar. Not that the Oscar meant anything. She means something. Her ancestors mean something. We mean something. But I think you guys get the point. Replace the system of racism, white supremacy with a system of justice immediately. Today. In 30 minutes. That's the code. The leadership is the code. The code is the leadership. And I hope I have contributed to less confusion. And always remember, keep learning and stay codified.
I'm sorry, son. All your money's gone. Got a Jones running through my bones. I'm sorry, son. All your money's gone.
People Activity Radio can be found at peopleactivityradio.com. That's peopleactivityradio.com. On Twitter at JohnGHorse. On Instagram at j.g.horse. On our YouTube channel titled People Activity Radio. On SoundCloud channel titled People Activity Radio. Our Tumblr page titled People Activity Radio. On Spotify titled People Activity Radio. Apple Podcast, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and all other podcast platforms. If you find this information constructive, please subscribe, like and share.
Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. If you do not understand racism, which is white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. confuse you. Confuse you. Confuse you. Confuse you. If you do not understand, confuse you. If you do not understand, confuse you. If you do not understand, confuse you. Confuse you.
My definition of white supremacy and racism, I use those two terms as synonyms. I use the same definition for both terms. That definition is as follows: a global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white.
Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war.